Hey, happy Monday, Grade Force. Today we're going to be looking at something a little bit more complicated in multiplication in math. We're going to be looking at multiplying two numbers that are not actually in the times table. So far you've been learning things like 3 times 4, 7 times 8 and stuff. And that's basically memorization, or you can use one of your sort of multiplication tricks. And this one you can't it's a little different because what we're actually going to be doing is using something called the multiplication algorithm, right? So it's a scary sounding thing, but that's how it's not quite big enough to fit on the screen. But basically, algorithm means it's basically it's a fancy way of saying rules you need to follow in order to complete a calculation correctly. So when someone says, "Oh, we're going to be using the multiplication algorithm," or "We're going to be using the long division algorithm," it's basically a way of saying you need to follow these steps in order to get the answer correctly. And so this is called the multiplication algorithm, and you're going to be using it for a long time. But this is sort of, if you haven't seen this yet, I think this is probably the first time you've seen it. Um, but we're going to start fairly slow so that you can get the steps, the rules ready down so that you know what you're doing. And then we'll make it more complicated a little later on in later grades when you get into grade 5 and 6. So multiplication algorithm. Let's take a look at this sort of a multiplication problem. Now, this is obviously not in the times tables. 36 times 4, it's not in the times tables. You could do a halving and doubling strategy to try and figure this out, but we're going to use the multiplication algorithm to solve this problem. So the first thing we need to do is rewrite this equation so that the numbers are lined up by place value. So this is what it's going to look like when we rewrite it. And the reason we do it that way is because we want the 6 to be above the 4, because they are both in the ones column, if you remember when you did numeration earlier this year. And the 3, it's 30, 3 tens, it's in the tens column. So we're going to line it up this way, and this will help us to make sure we don't make any mistakes by not understanding what the real value of the digits are when we do the question. So let me show you a little bit about how the steps work in the multiplication algorithm. So we have 36 times 4. We're going to start with our ones here. So we're going to take a look at the 6 and the 4. We're going to multiply 4 times 6. So the ones digits get multiplied together by themselves. We're not going to worry about the 3 right now. So we're multiplying the 4 times the 6. Well, you probably remember by your multiplication tables that 4 times 6 is 24. So I'm going to put my 24, and you'll notice that I've lined up the 4 and the 24 underneath the 4 and the 6, because 4 here represents 4 ones, that's a ones column, and the 2 in 20 is 2 tens, it's in my tens column. So I'm going to do that. Now the next step is I want to take a look at the 3 and the 4. So we've done 4 times 6. Now I'm doing 4 times 3. Well, 4 times 3, you probably remember as well, is 12. All right, so now, what do we do with the 12? So you might think, whoops, you might think that you take the 12 and you just put it right here. All right, that might look right to you that you are just going to be putting the 12 beside the 24. But does that really look correct? Let's think about this for a second. Let's use some checking for reasonableness here. 4 times 36 can't be 1,224 because 4 times 100, as you know, is 400, and 100 is way bigger than 36. And 400 is way smaller than this. So we've made a mistake. We need to take a step back and restart. All right. So we're going to take a step back and restart this problem and see where we went wrong. So 36 times 4 is 24. So I'm going to put the 24. Whoops. I'm going to put my 24 here. I'm just going to type it in. Here's my 24, except I don't want it underlined. So there's my 24, and my 4 times 3, as we know, is 12. However, what are we going to do with this 12? We know we can't put it there. The trick to know what to do with the 12s comes from your understanding about what this really means. 4 times 3 is 12, but is that a 3? It's not really a 3, right? When you think about that 3, yes, it is the digit 3, but it's really the number 30. So that's going to change a little bit where we're going to put our values, all right? The other thing we need to think about is the 24 here and the 12. Well, if I multiply 4 times 3 is 12, that's really 120 because the 3 is really 30, which means that this 2 needs to make room for this 2, for this 12. So I am going to put my 2 up here to basically say, okay, I remember the 2 was there, but I have to put something else here in my tens column before I put the 2 there. So my 4 times 3 is 12, right? Whoops. So my 4 times 3 is 12. I'm going to put the 12 there. But now what I need to do is I need to take this 2 and I need to add it to the 12 because this 2 represents two tens. It was in my tens column. And this 12, the 2 in this column also represents two tens. So in fact, I'm going to add that 2 to this 2, and then it becomes 144. All right, so 4 times 36, the answer is 144. Now I know that seems complicated, so we're going to try another one. Let's say I have 26 times 5. All right, and I want to do 26 times 5 and figure out what, I'm just going to make this bigger first, and figure out what the answer is. So first step is to rewrite the question so that one number is underneath the other in the proper place value column. So here we go. I am going to do this, and that's not working. Interesting. There we go. And the other thing I need to do is get rid of these spaces because there's spaces here that should not be there. There, that's better. So say I want to do 26 times 5. And so the 26 times 5, I now have it lined up properly. 6 over the 5 in the ones column. The 2 is in my tens column. First step is 5 times 6, which we know is equal to 30. So I'm going to take my 30 and I'm going to write it underneath here, but I'm not going to put both digits. I'm going to put the one that's in the ones column. So in 30, the 0 is in the ones column. And the 3, which is my tens, what I'm going to do with that 3 is I'm going to stick it above the tens column here that I'm going to add in later. Now I'm going to go 5 times 2. All right, and we know that 5 times 2 equals 10. So now I can put my 10 in here, except I have to add this 3, right? So it's actually going to be 130. All right, so that's basically the steps to doing a 2-digit times 1-digit multiplication algorithm. I'm going to put another video on that is sort of explains this in a different way, but it's basically the same idea. And we'll give you a couple of questions to try at home, and we'll take our time with this if you're having trouble with it. But we will take our time with this because this is an important sort of thing you need to understand. All right, I will talk to you later.